My father-in-law threw hot coffee on me in front of my mother. She made his family lose everything they owned. Hey family. Hit that subscribe button, drop a hello in the comments and tell us where in the world you're listening from. Alright, let's continue the story. The coffee was still steaming when it hit my face. I remember that detail because in the seconds before impact, I'd been admiring how perfectly my father-in-law Gerald had brewed it. Dark, rich, the kind that fills a room with warmth. Funny how your brain focuses on irrelevant things when your world is about to shatter. You disrespectful little. Gerald's voice was pure venom as the scalding liquid made contact with my skin. I screamed. The pain was immediate, blinding, like 1,000 needles piercing my cheeks and neck. Through my watering eyes, I saw my mother across the dining table, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. My husband Luke dropped his glass. Dad, what the hell? But Gerald wasn't finished. Your wife thinks she can waltz into my house and disrespect me? Tell me I'm wrong about my own business. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. My hands trembled as I touched my face, feeling the heat radiating from my scalded skin. The dining room that had welcomed me every Sunday for 3 years suddenly felt like a courtroom and I was on trial. I was just trying to help, I whispered, my voice breaking. The financial advice I'd offered, gentle, professional, coming from my years as an accountant, had apparently been the final straw in a pot that had been boiling since I married into this family. Luke grabbed napkins, pressing them against my burning skin. His sisters, Keisha and Tamara, sat motionless, their expressions unreadable. My mother-in-law Diane turned away, busying herself with clearing plates as if nothing had happened. But my mother stood up slowly, her chair scraping against hardwood. Her face had gone completely blank, the expression I'd seen only twice before in my life, both times before she destroyed someone's world. Luke, she said quietly, take your wife to the hospital. Now. My mother, Patricia Morrison, wasn't someone you crossed. Not because she was loud or violent. Quite the opposite. She was the kind of woman who smiled while dismantling your life piece by piece, always within the law, always with documentation. At 62, she'd built an empire from nothing, a commercial real estate portfolio worth 8 figures, earned through decades of strategic patience and an elephant's memory for slights. As Luke drove me to the emergency room, my phone buzzed continuously. Mom's messages came through in her characteristic style, brief, purposeful, terrifying in their calm. Did Gerald's restaurant pass its last health inspection? What's the address of Luke's parents' home? Send me Gerald's business partner's name. I knew what was happening. My mother had gone into what my late father used to call destruction mode. I'd seen it twice. Once when a business partner tried to cheat her, and once when my high school principal expelled my younger brother over a false accusation. Both times ended with apologies, resignations, and settlements. At the ER, a nurse documented my burns, 2nd degree across my left cheek, neck, and shoulder. She photographed everything, her face tight with professional concern that barely masked her anger. Who did this to you? She asked. My father-in-law, I said and watched her jaw clench. Luke paced the hallway outside on the phone with his father. Through the door I heard fragments. She's your wife. Can't believe you. Dad, you threw hot coffee on her face. The physician who treated me, Dr. Selena, applied Silvadene cream with gentle hands. You'll need to file a police report, she said firmly. This is assault. These burns could scar. The words echoed in my throbbing head. My face might be permanently marked because I'd suggested Gerald's soul food restaurant needed better accounting practices. My mother arrived at the hospital within 40 minutes, which meant she'd broken several speed limits. She walked into my treatment room like a general surveying a battlefield, her designer heels clicking with purpose. She looked at my bandaged face once, then turned to Luke. Your father did this? Luke nodded, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. Mrs. Morrison, I'm so sorry. He's never. Where does Gerald bank? Mom interrupted. What? His business accounts. Where does he keep them? I grabbed her hand. Mom, please. It was awful, but... She looked at me with eyes that could cut diamond. But nothing, Elena. That man assaulted my daughter in front of witnesses in his own home, over professional advice you offered as family. He humiliated you. He hurt you. Her voice never rose above conversational volume, but every word landed like a hammer. He did this because he thought there would be no consequences. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother-in-law Diane. Elena, Gerald is very sorry. He lost his temper. Let's not make this bigger than it is. Family handles things privately. Mom read it over my shoulder. Her laugh was ice. Family handles things privately. How convenient. She took out her phone and made a call. James? Patricia Morrison. I need you to pull everything on Gerald Thompson. Yes, everything. Business licenses, permits, property records, tax liens, health inspections, liquor license status. I want to know every vulnerability by morning. Luke's face went pale. Mrs. Morrison, what are you planning? My mother smiled and I felt cold despite my burning skin. I'm going to teach your father about consequences. Luke, you need to decide right now whose side you're on, because in about 72 hours, there won't be neutral ground. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes I felt the coffee hitting my face, saw Gerald's rage-twisted expression, heard Diane's footsteps walking away. My face throbbed despite the pain medication, and I lay in our bed staring at the ceiling while Luke sat in the chair by the window. Tell me about your father's restaurant, Mom said from the doorway. I hadn't heard her come in, but there she was, still dressed, still sharp-eyed at 2 a.m. Luke looked up. Gerald's place? It's been struggling for years. Dad's too proud to modernize, won't listen to advice about. He stopped, the irony hitting him. About financial management. And his partners? His brother Vernon owns 30%. Jerome Walker owns another 20%. Dad's got 50%, but he's used the restaurant as collateral for a lot of things. Mom's smile was predatory. Good. What else? Over the next hour Luke told her everything. How Gerald had borrowed against the restaurant 3 times. How health inspections had found violations that Gerald had paid to make disappear. How the liquor license was technically in his mother Diane's name because Gerald had too many violations to qualify. How Vernon had been wanting out of the partnership for years but Gerald refused to buy him out. My husband was betraying his father's secrets and I watched him break with every word. He's going to hate me, Luke whispered. He assaulted your wife, Mom said flatly. He chose hate first. The next morning my phone exploded. Diane called 17 times. Gerald's sisters called. His mother, Grandma Pauline, left a voicemail saying I was tearing the family apart over an accident. An accident. The word made me want to scream. Mom's investigator worked fast. By Wednesday morning she had a file thick enough to use as a weapon. We sat in her home office, the morning sun streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows, while she walked me through Gerald's empire of negligence. Your father-in-law is drowning in debt, she said, sliding papers across her desk. The restaurant is leveraged 300% beyond its value. He hasn't paid proper taxes in 2 years, been gaming the system with creative accounting that crosses into fraud. And these health inspection issues. She tapped a report. They're not just violations, Elena. They're criminal. He's been storing food at improper temperatures, has a rat infestation in the basement, and the fire suppression system hasn't been inspected in 5 years. I stared at the documents, my bandaged face tight. How is he still operating? Inspector Howard Michaels. He's been taking payments under the table for 6 years. Mom pulled out bank records showing cash deposits into Michaels's account, always 3 days after Gerald's place got a passing grade despite violations. I've already contacted the health department's internal affairs division. They're opening an investigation today. Mom. I'm not finished. Her voice could have frozen fire. Gerald also claims the restaurant as a minority-owned business to get tax breaks and preferential treatment on city contracts for catering. But the paperwork shows Vernon, his brother, as primary owner for those applications while Gerald claims primary ownership for loan purposes. That's fraud. Federal fraud. My stomach twisted. You're going to destroy him. No, baby. I'm going to let him destroy himself. I'm just accelerating the timeline. She stood, smoothing her suit. The health department inspector arrives at Gerald's place in 2 hours. A real one this time with the police because of the fraud allegations. Everything he's built on lies? It collapses today. Gerald's place sat on a corner lot in a neighborhood that remembered better days. The restaurant had been a fixture for 15 years, serving the kind of soul food that people drove across town for: fried chicken, collard greens, mac and cheese that could make you forget your troubles. I'd eaten there dozens of times, never knowing what festered beneath the hospitality. Mom insisted I come, though Luke begged me to stay home. "You need to see this," she said. "You need to watch what happens when bullies face consequences." We sat in her Mercedes across the street when the health department van arrived, followed by 2 police cars. Through the restaurant's windows, I saw Gerald's face transform from confusion to panic as the inspectors fanned out, one heading straight for the basement. My phone rang. Diane. I didn't answer. It rang again. Luke's sister Keisha. "What did you do?" "Elena, what the hell did you do?" I watched inspectors emerge from the basement with evidence bags and cameras, documenting everything. Gerald stood in the doorway, his face ashen, as they posted a closed by order of health department notice on his front door. Customers who'd been lined up for lunch dispersed, confused and disappointed. I saw Grandma Pauline arrive, saw her try to push past the inspectors, saw Gerald grab her arm and pull her back, shaking his head. "The restaurant is finished," Mom said calmly. "Once word spreads about rats and fraud, no amount of good food can save the reputation." I should have felt vindicated. Dad, I felt sick. "Mom, this is too much." She turned to me and her expression softened just slightly. "Is it? Elena, look at your face. You'll have scars. That man marked you permanently because you tried to help him and his family defended him. This isn't about revenge. This is about justice." But it felt like revenge. It felt like I'd unleashed something I couldn't control. The calls started within hours. Luke's phone wouldn't stop ringing, but it was my phone that received the real venom. Text messages from Gerald's sister Loretta. "You destroyed our family business over nothing. I hope you're proud." From Diane's sister Aunt Joyce. "Gerald made a mistake, but you and your mama are evil." From cousins I'd laughed with at barbecues. "Snitch. Traitor. Gold digger." Only Luke's brother Deshaun called with something like sympathy. "Elena, I'm sorry about what Dad did. That was wrong. But did you have to go nuclear?" "Did I? I hadn't done anything, my mother had." But the distinction didn't seem to matter to the Thompson family. I was the catalyst, the outsider who'd brought destruction into their midst. Luke sat on our couch, head in his hands as his mother called for the 40th time. This time he answered. I listened to one side of the conversation, heard his voice break. "Mom," he threw hot coffee on her face. "Yes, I saw the burns. Mom, she could have been blinded. I don't care if he's sorry now. No, I'm not choosing her over family, I'm choosing right over wrong." He hung up, tears streaming down his face. "They want me to convince you to drop everything. Dad's talking about pressing charges against your mother for, I don't even know what. Harassment. His lawyer says if the health department thing goes away, they might avoid criminal charges." "Can it go away?" I asked quietly. Mom walked in from the kitchen, having heard everything. "No. The inspector found evidence of ongoing violations, falsified records, and bribery. The city prosecutor is building a case. Gerald will face charges regardless of what we do now." Luke looked at her with something between hatred and desperation. "You've destroyed him. He'll lose everything. The restaurant, probably his house because it's collateral. My parents will be broke. Was that necessary? Your father thought he could assault my daughter without consequences," Mom said, her voice diamond hard. "He was wrong. Vernon Thompson had always been the quieter brother, the one who managed the kitchen while Gerald worked the front. I'd liked Vernon. He'd always been kind to me, complimenting my cooking when I brought dishes to family gatherings, asking about my work with genuine interest. So when he called asking to meet privately, I agreed. We met at a coffee shop across town. The irony of meeting over coffee wasn't lost on me, and I ordered tea instead. my hands still shaking when anything hot came near my face. Vernon looked exhausted, older than his 57 years. Elena, I need you to understand something. Gerald and we haven't been on good terms for years. He's been running that restaurant into the ground, making decisions without consulting me, treating my 30% like it's worth nothing. I sipped my tea carefully, waiting. When I heard what he did to you, Vernon continued, I wanted to beat him myself. That's not who we were raised to be. Mama Pauline taught us better. He paused, his jaw working. Your mother contacted me. Did you know that? My stomach dropped. No. She offered to help me sue Gerald for my share of the business. Said she'd even cover legal costs if I testified about the financial irregularities I've witnessed. Vernon's eyes met mine. She's thorough, your mama. Knew exactly which buttons to push. Are you going to do it? He nodded slowly. Elena, I'm 60% owner of that property the restaurant sits on. Gerald's been paying me pennies while keeping most of the profit, what little there was. He's been lying to me for years about the books. Your mother showed me evidence of that. So yes, I'm going to sue. I'm going to take what's mine and let him drown. I felt like I was watching a building implode in slow motion. His own brother. His own daughter-in-law, Vernon countered gently. He threw coffee on family first, Elena. Don't carry guilt for setting in motion what he started. The lawsuit hit like a bomb the following week. Vernon Thompson versus Gerald Thompson and Diane Thompson, seeking dissolution of partnership, repayment of diverted funds and ownership of the property. The amount, $470,000 in damages and unpaid distributions. Gerald couldn't afford a good lawyer. The restaurant was closed, his assets frozen pending the health department investigation, and now his own brother was coming for everything else. I heard through Luke that Diane had started pawning jewelry, that they'd borrowed money from Grandma Pauline, that Gerald had aged 10 years in 10 days. Part of me felt sick. But another part, the part that still felt phantom burns on my face, that woke up with nightmares of hot liquid and rage, felt nothing at all. Mom's next move was surgical. She discovered that Gerald and Diane's house, a modest 3-bedroom they'd owned for 20 years, was now collateral for 7 different loans. They'd refinanced repeatedly to prop up the restaurant, to pay for Tamara's law school, to cover Luke's wedding to me. They were underwater by at least $200,000. One more push, Mom said over dinner at her house, and the bank will foreclose. They're 3 months behind on payments. Stop, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Please, Mom. This is enough. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. Enough. Elena, baby, when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. Gerald didn't just hurt you, he showed contempt for you, for your profession, for your worth. And his family? They defended him. They called you a liar, said you were overreacting. Diane tried to make you complicit in covering it up. But their house, Mom. That's their home. They should have thought about that before Gerald decided your face was worth less than his ego. Luke walked in then, and the look he gave my mother could have melted steel. You're going after our house now? The house I grew up in. The house your father used as an ATM, Mom corrected. I'm doing nothing but watching the natural consequences of terrible decisions. Grandma Pauline requested a meeting. Not demanded, requested, which should have been my first warning that something had shifted. We met at a neutral location, a church community center, with Luke, his grandmother, his sisters Keisha and Tamara, and surprisingly Vernon. Mom refused to come. This is your story now, Elena, she said. You decide how it ends. Grandma Pauline looked smaller than I remembered, her 81 years suddenly visible in the stoop of her shoulders. She'd always been the family's moral center, the woman whose word was law at holiday gatherings. But now she looked defeated. Elena, she began, her voice soft, I need to apologize. When this first happened, I called it an accident because I didn't want to believe my son could do something so horrible. But I've seen the pictures from the hospital. I've seen your burns. Tears rolled down her weathered cheeks. There's no excuse for what Gerald did. None. I felt my throat tighten. This was the apology I'd needed from someone who mattered. But, Grandma Pauline continued, and there it was, I'm begging you to stop your mother. Gerald's made mistakes. Lord knows he's made mistakes. But he's losing everything. The restaurant, the house, his reputation. He's talking about. She paused, swallowing hard, about not wanting to live anymore. That's not justice, baby. That's destruction. Keisha leaned forward. Lena, we know Dad was wrong. We're not defending what he did. But this has gone too far. Vernon's suing, the criminal charges, the house foreclosure. It's too much. I didn't start any of that, I said, hearing the defensiveness in my voice. The health department violations were real. Vernon had legitimate grievances. The house loans were Gerald's choices. But your mother orchestrated all of it, Tamara said, her lawyer instincts sharp. She coordinated timing, pushed Vernon to sue, probably tipped off the health department. This is calculated revenge, not justice. Was she wrong? Could I really claim innocence when I'd watched my mother deploy her arsenal and never said stop until it was too late? I went to see Gerald. Mom tried to stop me, arguing that I owed him nothing, that seeing him would only make me feel guilty for things I shouldn't feel guilty about. But I needed to look him in the eye, needed to know if any part of the man who'd welcomed me into his family 3 years ago still existed. He was staying in Vernon's basement apartment, the ultimate humiliation for a proud man. When he opened the door, I barely recognized him. Gerald had always been robust, larger than life, the kind of man who filled a room. Now he looked hollowed out, 20 pounds lighter, eyes sunken and red-rimmed. Elena, he said, and his voice broke on my name. We sat in that basement apartment, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and for the first time since the coffee incident we were just two people. Not victim and perpetrator, not family divided, just two people sitting in the wreckage. I'm sorry, Gerald said, and the words sounded like they were being pulled from somewhere deep and broken inside him. I was angry at the world, at the restaurant failing, at feeling like I'd let everyone down. And you were right about everything you said. The accounting was a mess, I was making bad decisions and I knew it. But hearing it out loud in front of my family from my son's wife. He covered his face with his hands. I snapped. And I hurt you. I hurt you badly and I'm so sorry. I touched my face, feeling the tender new skin under the bandages. You scarred me. Literally scarred me. Do you understand that? I'll see this in the mirror for the rest of my life. I know. God, Elena, I know. I'd do anything to take it back. But you can't. The words hung in the air like smoke. You can't take back what you did and I can't take back what my mother did in response. We're both living with consequences now. Can you stop her? Can you make this end? His voice was desperate, pleading. The house. Elena, that's where my kids grew up. Diane's going to be homeless. We're going to be homeless. And there it was, the moment of decision. I could call my mother, could ask her to pull back, could maybe salvage something from this disaster. Or I could let the dominoes fall. I looked at Gerald Thompson and saw a broken man who'd made a terrible choice in a terrible moment. I also saw the burns on my face that would fade but never fully disappear. I'll try, I whispered. I'll try. But trying wasn't enough. By the time I called my mother, by the time I begged her to stop, events had already been set in motion that couldn't be undone. The bank had started foreclosure proceedings. The city prosecutor had filed criminal charges. Assault, health code violations, fraud, and bribery. Vernon's lawsuit was moving forward regardless of Gerald's financial situation. And then came the final revelation, the one I never saw coming. Luke's sister Tamara called me at midnight, her voice shaking. Elena, you need to come to Mom and Dad's house. Now. I found the Thompson family gathered in that soon-to-be foreclosed house, all of them looking shell-shocked. On the coffee table was a stack of papers that Tamara had discovered while helping her parents organize documents for court. Evidence that Gerald had stolen from his own mother. Over the past 5 years he'd been taking money from Grandma Pauline's accounts, her social security, her savings, her pension, using power of attorney privileges to fund the restaurant. $230,000, gone, hidden in creative accounting that made it look like business loans that were never repaid. He stole from Mama Pauline, Keisha said, her voice hollow. From his own mother. While she was babysitting his grandkids and cooking Sunday dinners, he was stealing her retirement. I looked at Gerald, who sat in his armchair like a condemned man. Diane stood beside him, tears streaming down her face. Tears of shock, I realized, not knowledge. She hadn't known. I was going to pay it back, Gerald said weakly. Once the restaurant turned around, I was going to pay her back with interest. But it never turned around, Vernon said coldly. Because you're a terrible businessman who was too proud to admit it. So you stole from your mother instead. Luke looked at me across that room and I saw something die in his eyes. His father wasn't just a man who'd lost his temper and done something awful. He was a thief, a fraud, someone who'd betrayed everyone who loved him. Call your mother, Luke said to me, his voice empty. Tell her she was right about everything. 6 months later, I stood in Mom's home office, looking at a document that represented the end of the Thompson family as we'd known it. Gerald had pled guilty to fraud, assault, and elder financial abuse. He'd received 3 years in prison with parole eligibility after 18 months. The restaurant property had been awarded to Vernon, who'd sold it immediately to pay off debts. The house had been foreclosed, leaving Gerald and Diane without equity or assets. Grandma Pauline had moved in with Keisha, her life savings gone at 81 years old, dependent on her grandchildren for the first time in her life. She'd stopped speaking to Gerald entirely. Visiting him in prison wasn't even a consideration. Luke and I had separated 2 months after Gerald's sentencing. Not because he blamed me, he didn't, not really. But every time he looked at me, he saw the destruction of his family, and every time I looked at him, I saw the face of the man who'd hurt me. We were casualties of a war neither of us had started but both of us had sustained. My mother's victory had been complete and absolute. She'd proven that no one could hurt her daughter without consequences, that justice, her version of it, would always prevail. But as I sat in her office, my hand unconsciously touching the faint scars on my face, I wondered about the cost. Gerald was in prison, yes. He'd face justice for his crimes. But Diane was working 2 jobs at 63 to afford a studio apartment. Grandma Pauline had lost her retirement and her son. Vernon had gotten money but lost a brother. Luke had lost his entire family structure. Keisha and Tamara and Deshawn had a father in prison and a mother barely surviving. Do you regret it? Mom asked softly, reading my expression. I thought about the coffee burning my face. Thought about the dismissal, the casual cruelty, the family that had defended abuse. Thought about Gerald's crimes being exposed, about Grandma Pauline's stolen money being discovered. No, I said finally. But I grieve it. Is that strange? No, baby. That's what makes you better than them. You can hold 2 truths at once, that justice was necessary and that it came at a terrible price. The moral? Actions have consequences, but so does revenge. Gerald Thompson learned that violence and theft destroy everything. My mother proved that protecting your children is absolute. And I learned that sometimes winning means losing everything else. As I left Mom's office that day, I knew I'd carry these scars, visible and invisible, forever. The Thompson family would never recover from what Gerald started and what my mother finished. And somewhere between the burn and the devastation, I'd learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes justice and revenge look exactly the same, and the people who pay the price aren't always the ones who deserved it most. Gerald threw coffee on my face in a moment of rage. My mother returned fire with calculated precision. Both actions were about power. Both left casualties. Both changed lives forever. The real tragedy? It didn't have to be this way. If Gerald had apologized immediately, gotten help, taken accountability, but pride stopped him. If his family had supported me instead of defending abuse, but loyalty blinded them. If I'd stopped my mother sooner, but pain and anger clouded my judgment. Now I live with the aftermath. Divorced, scarred, watching a family scattered to the winds, knowing I played my part in the destruction even if I didn't throw the first blow or orchestrate the response. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But sometimes what doesn't kill you just leaves you standing alone in the ruins, wondering if strength was worth the price. If you've experienced family toxicity or abuse, please share your story in the comments below. Remember to like and subscribe for more real-life stories, and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload. These stories matter, your voice matters.